It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. How do you tackle prison overcrowding? Well, an independent review has suggested violent prisoners, including those convicted of sexual offences, should be released after serving a third of their sentence. It also recommends that more offenders are managed in the community. Short sentences of less than 12 months would be scrapped, apart from in exceptional circumstances such as in domestic abuse cases. Tonight we'll discuss the review's recommendations with a former prison governor, an ex-offender who now campaigns for prison reform, and a woman whose sister was murdered in a brutal attack, with the perpetrator sentenced to 35 years behind bars. Also ahead, we speak to the husband of Liz Hopkin, the teacher who was stabbed by a pupil at a school in Wales. He's calling for urgent action to tackle behaviour. Liz was stabbed by a teenage girl in Carmarthenshire last April. Another teacher and a pupil were also attacked. The teenager responsible, convicted of 3 counts of attempted murder. You cannot be serious. We'll speak to the 9-year-old campaigning to stop the expansion of the All England Lawn Tennis Club in Wimbledon. He's making a racket about the impact on wildlife and the local environment, and he has some celebrity backing. Plus, get ready for some banging tunes as we meet 10-year-old Eden Farrell, aka DJ Steady. She's been a Mixmaster finalist, is DJing at a festival this weekend, and will perform her first set in Ibiza this summer. All that to come, much more here on the UK Tonight. But first, let's get the latest on the shooting in Washington. 2 Israeli embassy staff shot dead as they left an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum last night. Police have arrested a 30-year-old suspect who shouted "Free Palestine" as he was apprehended. Well, Sky's Ashish Joshi joins me now from Washington with the latest. Ashish.
Yes, we know the identity of the 2 young victims who were attending an event here last night at about 9 o'clock. And they have been identified as Yaron Lisinski and Sarah Milgram. Both of them worked at the Israeli embassy. They were with a group of 4 people, and as they left the museum last night, the Jewish museum last night, they were approached by the suspect, who's been identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez. He shot 2 of them, and then he went into the building, and then he was arrested by security officers and police officers, and then he later told police officers where to retrieve the weapon. And at the moment of arrest, he shouted, "Free, free Palestine." The attack has been condemned by world leaders, obviously by Israeli leaders, including Benjamin Netanyahu, and from Donald Trump, who tweeted very early on last night that this was an anti-Semitic attack and there was no place for hatred in the United States of America. Now, the suspect is due in court later today, but we know that he is a 30-year-old from Chicago. That is now the focus of the FBI investigation. Police authorities were very quick to assure Americans yesterday that they think he was acting alone and there is no more immediate threat to Americans and especially to Jewish targets here in this country. But of course, that deep dive investigation continues. At Sky, we have verified an X account where Rodriguez posted an 8-page essay blaming the atrocities he claims are being carried out by Israelis against Palestinians as the motives for his action.
Thank you, Ashish Joshi in Washington for us tonight. Also tonight, it's an issue which has hit the headlines countless times in recent years. How do you solve the issue of prison overcrowding? Well, now, a major report has set out its vision for how criminals should be sentenced and jailed. The suggestions made in the independent sentencing review have raised more than a few eyebrows, namely, releasing some violent offenders after they've served a third of their sentence, voluntary chemical castration of some sex offenders, and scrapping entirely short sentences, those of less than 12 months. These are given out for crimes such as shoplifting. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Becky Johnson.
The first time Daniel went to prison was for robbery, the second time for possession of a firearm. He got out early on a tag last summer as prisons neared capacity, but isn't convinced freeing more people sooner will keep them out of jail.
Would it have been easy to get involved in crime again?
And the honest truth, yeah, because anybody can be a friend. It don't matter if you're on a GPS tag or a normal tag. I do think is if you really want to cut prison numbers, What they need to do is start having more rehabilitation in jail.
He does think prison can be the wrong place for people who've committed less serious offences.
You're going in there with big time people, and they're enhancing what you know. They're telling you certain things that you didn't even know before now. So now you want a piece of their pie. So it's, if anything, sometimes jail is birthing bigger criminals, if that makes sense.
Thousands of prisoners will now get the chance to serve only a third of their sentence behind bars, with greater use of tagging to monitor them on release.
I honestly believe that victims will die because of these changes.
Rhiannon Bragg was stalked by her ex-partner. He turned up near her home and held her at gunpoint for 8 hours. Once he'd been released from prison on licence, she didn't feel safe until she found out he'd died.
I felt constantly at risk. What if he breaks those licence conditions? How long have I got? What will he do? So I never felt complete safety. I never felt free from fear.
These are massive changes to free up more space in prisons that will mean many more criminals are back out on the streets. People will be more reliant on the probation services and technology to work properly to keep them safe. In Parliament, the Justice Secretary defended the changes.
If our prisons collapse, courts are forced to suspend trials. The police must halt their arrests. Crime goes unpunished, and criminals run amok and chaos reigns.
What do these changes amount to? A get-out-of-jail-free card for dangerous criminals.
For sex offenders, a pilot scheme offering voluntary chemical castration will now be expanded, with the government looking into whether it could become mandatory.
Doctors don't see themselves as agents of social control. If you were to try to make it mandatory here, it would have to be attached as a condition of parole, and if they refuse medication, to be brought back into prison. But as I said, we simply wouldn't support that. We don't think that's a doctor's role.
For communities plagued by petty crime, frustration that most sentences under a year will be scrapped.
We can see the cameras up here and outside. How long ago did they go in?
About 6-7 months ago.
Surinder had to install the security cameras to deter shoplifters. Now, thieves are unlikely to face jail.
They more or less look at you and laugh at you in the face that, you know, OK, you've caught us and now what can you do?
These changes, the real-world consequences of the prison crisis that will leave many feeling less safe on Britain's streets. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Birmingham.
Well, let's discuss the recommendations of the sentencing review in some more detail. Tonight, I'm joined by Vanessa Harris. She is a former prison governor and former head of security and operations at Wormwood Scrubs. Jonathan Robinson is an author and former prisoner who now campaigns for prison reform. And Katie Brett also joins us. Her sister Sasha Marsden died after being stabbed 58 times back in 2013. She is a member of the Justice for Victims group, and you will remember Katie's interview with me not so long ago here on the UK Tonight about her sister. Thank you all for joining me tonight. An important day. Many will say this is decades in the making. A broken prison system is nothing new. Vanessa, I'm going to come to you first. As a former prison governor, these recommendations today, in the main, do you support them? Are these the fixes that are needed?
I support some of them. I support the less than 12 month sentence except in exceptional circumstances, because the facts are there that 52% of prisoners who are sentenced to 12 months or less go on to reoffend. And that's even greater for prisoners sentenced 6 months or less, up to 62%. I support the mandatory chemical castration of sex offenders. I was pleased to see that David Gawk gave a whole chapter to victims of crime, because they must always be at the forefront of any justice system. But there are some things that concern me. How the probation service, who are already overstretched, are going to cope. Yes, they're going to get £700 million funding, but is that enough? I don't know, and I'm wary of that. I support the fact that they are going to improve technology from various countries around the world, because I think, you know, our normal tagging sort of lacks substance, to be honest. But you know, there are parts of this that I am very concerned of, whether it is going to be rushed through without thinking through the causes, which is the usual thing for ministers to do, rush through extended sentences.
Well, yeah, they need to free up those prison spaces, because the prisons, we're told, will be full by November. But you're right in terms of, you know, how quickly this will move. A lot of arguments today that actually the government is just moving the pressure from the prisons into other areas like the probation service. I'm going to bring in Jonathan. David Gawk said, regardless of prison capacity, which is the headline at the moment, the prisons are nearly full, reducing sentences was the right thing to do. And as Vanessa pointed out, they're scrapping sentences for things like shoplifting if you were going to get less than 12 months. What are your views on these sentencing recommendations?
I think alternatives to custody for low-level offenders is certainly worth looking at, because everyone is in agreement that, as is, prison isn't working. I've just earlier this evening watched the Justice Secretary on another channel being interviewed, saying part of the core problem is prisoners being released, then being recalled for further offending. Now, if that isn't an argument that totally underlines the fact that when people are in custody, we're not doing enough with them to stop them reoffending. When I was quite rightly in prison for a very short time in 2011, I met youngsters in their early 20s who were serving their 9th sentence. And when you talk to young people, some of whom so obviously are full of potential and promise, who have been within the walls of the prison system, probably quite rightly, who the system is doing nothing to fix them with, was a eye-opening moment for me. And even still today, 70% of the prison population has the reading ability of an 11-year-old. I cannot fathom why we are not doing more with people, especially young people, in custody whilst we've got them.
So you feel there should be more of a focus on rehabilitation and education for those that go into prison? I want to ask you as well, because the recommendations did say, look, it's time to consider alternative punishments to custodial sentences for those who have committed, you know, nobody likes the term, but petty crimes. A crime's a crime, right? But they're seen as lesser offences. What might work? For instance, courts will be given greater flexibility to impose fines or travel, driving and football bans. Are those the kind of punishments that will be more effective?
Let's not beat about the bush here. The majority of people in prison on low-level offences have got huge substance abuse problems. It costs something like £50,000 a year to keep someone in prison. I suggest the Justice Minister, and on that subject, it is good that the Justice Minister is still the Justice Minister, because under the last administration, they changed Justice Ministers and Prisons Ministers like you and I change our socks. I suggest someone be brave and look at alternatives to custody for the low-level offenders to address their issues, whether it's substance problems, education problems, or the list goes on and on. But prison as is doesn't work, and it's a dreadful waste of time, a dreadful waste of money. Within the 192 pages of this report today is some potential idea of rewarding prisoners who engage. How can you engage when you're locked in a cell for 23 hours a day?
OK. At this point, I want to bring in Katie. Katie, you've been listening patiently, and Vanessa there said at the beginning that there's a whole chapter devoted to the victims of crime in this report. I know as part of the Victims for Justice group, which includes the parents of Sarah Everard, you did want to meet David Gawk before these recommendations were published. You didn't get the opportunity to do that. The focus very much on offenders today. Do victims feel they have been overlooked in all of this, in this conversation?
Yeah, we, as a group, we've been discussing it, and we all feel that we've just been completely disregarded. We asked to meet with him. We posed some questions to him, and he's refused to answer those questions. And we just feel like no serious effort has actually been made to even take our views into consideration as victims when they're talking about releasing serious offenders.
You've written a letter to MPs from your group. I just want to read some of that out. We shouldn't forget that working or studying, refraining from taking drugs, following the rules, these are the things that the law-abiding majority have to do every day anyway. We shouldn't be rewarding serious criminals for doing what the rest of us do. We should be punishing them more instead if they won't. I'm interested in some of the questions you want to ask David Gawk, particularly now you have seen these recommendations. What would you want to pose to him? What do you want to ask him?
Well, we just wanted to know how they were going to consider the views of victims and their families when they were passing sentences.
Because we hear so often on the UK Tonight, victims and their families, it's presented as a fait accompli if someone's being released, and you may only find out just days before. And of course, that's very difficult for people who have already been traumatised to deal with. I want to talk, if I may, about prison not always being the answer. I want to go back to that because the prison support charity NACRO has said a move away from short-term jail sentences towards community sentences could be a genuine game changer, interrupting the vicious cycle that traps people in prison. That's something Jonathan was talking about. And Vanessa, I'd like you to pick up on that because you talked about a budget there, but this is a societal problem as well, isn't it? The causes of what gets people to the point where they are being sent to prison.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are many causes, whether that be drug, alcohol abuse, mental health issues, where people are sent to prison possibly is not the best place. They would far better be serving in the community with support systems, good support systems in the community. And there are many prisoners who, in my opinion, shouldn't be in prison because of that. And I would hope that this review will adhere to that and help that. You know, prison always will have a place for the most violent in our society to protect the public and to give punishment, you know, the punishment of denial of liberty. But there are many other options that we need to look at. We can't. There is no way that we can get to a point where our prisons are full and our society breaks down.
Yeah. And Katie, does it give you any comfort when you hear the Justice Secretary saying, for instance, you know, those to be given shorter sentences or early release doesn't include those who commit the crime of domestic abuse? It will not be for serious offenders. They would continue to have to serve at least 2/3 of their sentence. So the Justice Secretary saying that in certain circumstances, the most serious of circumstances, for example, the perpetrator of your sister's murder, they would not be eligible for any of this. Does that give you any comfort?
Not really, no, because they're saying a lot of things, but they don't seem to be sticking to what they're saying. The sentence that my sister's killer, as an example, was already too lenient, which we've previously discussed. And there's no option now for us as victims to challenge that because of the laws that are in place. But like offenders, sex offenders, they shouldn't be being considered because they're escalating crimes. So if someone is committing a crime such as rape, and then they only serve 1/3 or 2/3 of their sentence and then they're released for good behaviour, they're going to come out and then they're going to go on to commit a crime such as the crime that was committed against my sister, because they are escalating crimes. And if they're not being punished properly, like, we're not talking about shoplifters and the smaller scale crimes in the group Justice for Victims. We're talking about serious crimes and serious offenders such as sex offenders and child abusers. Like, fair enough, you're saying, well, not people that are found guilty of domestic abuse, but what about child abusers? What about rapists? Why should they serve 1/3 or 2/3 of their sentence and then escalate on to commit a crime such as murder?
Yeah, for victims and survivors and their families, you know, serving at least 2/3 of their sentence again, you know, you want them to serve the full sentence that they have been given. Listen, there'll be much more to discuss on this, so I'm sure we will speak again. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Vanessa Frake-Harris, former prison governor, Jonathan Robinson, author and former prisoner who now campaigns for prison reform and education, Katie Brett, representing her 16-year-old Sasha Marsden, who was murdered. Really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. Net migration into the UK falls by almost half in the last year. That's the biggest drop since the pandemic. We'll bring you the details. Also ahead, the campaigners making a racket over Wimbledon's plan to expand the tournament. And we're going to speak to the 10-year-old DJ prodigy who's getting herself ready for Ibiza.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Net migration fell by nearly 50% in the year to December 2024. That's according to new data from the Office for National Statistics. The figure stands at 431,000, down 49.9% from 860,000 a year earlier. This drop is the largest ever recorded for a 12-month period, while long-term immigration to the UK also fell below 1 million for the first time in 3 years. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue has more details.
If you want to see how migration has changed the UK, Coventry is a place to look.
We are multicultural, but I think we need to scale back on the amount of people that are here.
Nearly 40,000 people have settled here from abroad since Brexit, a population increase of 5%, most from outside Europe.
So you basically think immigration used to work, but it's not working anymore?
It's not working now, no.
You think of these people, some people are coming in to work in this country, and they can't have their families here, or the wives, or the kids or anything.
It's about community cohesion, public services and businesses like Richard's not far away.
We went through a period of trying to recruit British workers to work in our waste transfer station about 10 years ago, and none of them were able to stick it for longer than a fortnight.
If you look at where there's been a rapid rise in migration since Brexit, it's actually places outside London, in particular the northeast, where we've seen the biggest change compared to historic levels. But the reason that we are here in Coventry today is because this is a place that has seen a big change relative to its size. 1 in 10 people that live here are recent migrants since Brexit. A significant part of that, I should say, are students. 2/3 of their student fees come from international students.
Net migration numbers falling significantly today has an impact on student numbers, on universities like Coventry, and on politics in Westminster.
Well, the last government, towards the end of its time in office, made a number of changes. For example, saying that students, most students, and people working on social care visas could not bring over family members. The salary threshold to bring over family members in general was raised to £28,000.
Well, hold on. Didn't net migration reach nearly 1 million under the Conservatives? Are you the right people to be talking about this?
Well, net migration got too high. I mean, under successive governments, frankly, including the last one, the figures were way too high. That was a mistake. It was wrong.
And of course, the other small but important part of the story is irregular migration. These are the pictures the Home Office want you to see today. Men being deported back to Albania. Labour may have already presided over a fall in legal migration, but they've also seen record numbers of channel crossings so far this year.
This reduction in numbers is important and welcome, but we need to go significantly further. And that's why we're introducing new visa controls and also stronger language requirements as part of our immigration white paper, as well as increasing returns from those who have no right to be in the UK.
Coventry is a snapshot, but a place shaped by migration. Today's figures won't change that. Net migration has fallen to less than 500,000. But what the right number is for the public and politicians is not clear. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Coventry and Westminster.
Says come on the UK tonight. I'm going to speak to the husband of a teacher who was stabbed by a pupil at a school in Wales as he calls for urgent action to tackle behaviour. And we're going to be joined by the 10-year-old campaigning to stop the Wimbledon tennis tournament from expansion. The husband of a teacher who was stabbed by a student at a school in Wales has called for urgent action to tackle pupil behaviour. Liz Hopkin was stabbed by a teenage girl in Carmarthenshire last April. Another teacher and a pupil were also attacked in the incident. The pupil was convicted of 3 counts of attempted murder. Well, now Liz's husband, John, is calling for an independent inquiry into what happened and is urging the Welsh Government to take steps to improve behaviour in our schools. Well, I'm delighted to say that John joins me now. John, it's really good to see you. Thank you for coming on to the UK tonight. I know this is a real personal story for you that drives you and Liz to try and bring about some change. So let's talk first of all about why you want an independent inquiry.
Well, what we're concerned about is we've got a conviction there for attempted murder, but to me, I'm worried that the inquiries that will take place will only look at the short term, the last year or two, and which, I don't think any 12-year-old suddenly gets to being 12-year-old and then turns into a potential murderer. I think that without a full inquiry to see the full backstory leading up to it, going right back, because we heard in court, and it's been reported in the press, that she admitted that she'd been carrying a knife in since year 3 in primary school. Well, that's a long time where there should have been red flags coming up in the primary schools. She was in 2 secondary schools. And them red flags, if they were there, we want to know whether they were ignored, whether that was, whether there was things that could have been done by the local authority at the time that they didn't do. And if there is, what is that changing now so that something like this can't happen in the future? And then we're also, I know it's Carmarthenshire, but I think that a full inquiry on this particular incident will then help across Wales and England, hopefully, but, I don't know the education system in England, to see what lessons can be learned to prevent somebody getting hurt again in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you've worked in 9 schools yourself in Wales, John, and you'll have seen that they all approach the issue of pupil behaviour slightly differently. And you think consistency in addressing pupil behaviour is key here, a standard to be set for pupil behaviour?
Yeah, well, ever since I started teaching, we've been told, consistency is the key to education and to learning, and yet it's not being put across in this particular way with behaviour. As you say, I've been in 9 schools, and every school I've started in, I've had to learn a new behaviour procedures and new behaviour policies for school. And it's confusing enough for teachers, but pupils move from school to school as well, and they don't know what's right. And I think it's down to without a cohesive, positive guidance from government, school head teachers don't know what they can do and what they can't do. So the mixed messages go all the way through the education system, from right to top, right down to the pupils in the classroom.
I know that you and Liz are together in your thoughts on this. You think that, if something isn't done now, this is likely to happen in another school somewhere else again. Can I ask how Liz is doing? Because, as I said, this is personal to you. This has a big impact, not just on Liz, but both of your lives.
Yeah, well, physically, wounds are healing and she's getting there, but mentally, she's struggling a lot. I know that she has a real feeling of dread when she's thinking about school, and she's thinking about myself being back in the same school. Our son teaches there as well. And how can I say it? See, it's hard for us as a family, because when you see, if you knew Liz before, she's a very confident, strong person. She was a good leader in school and very strong and, led by example. And to see that confidence just gone, it's a real shock, and it's hard to take for the people who know her and love her. She's needing people around her. She needs us around her a lot more now, and just her confidence. It's just gone. She, like I said, she's got a feeling of dread being about the school, meeting people from the school. You know, it's. I think it's really hard for us to take. It's, particularly hard for Liz.
Yeah. I can well imagine, but please send her our best from Sky News.
Thank you.
Yeah, we wish her a recovery in all aspects. As you said, you've described it so well, the impact that it has on a person when something this catastrophic happens. The teenager who attacked your wife, who can't be named for legal reasons, was detained for 15 years after she was convicted of those 3 counts of attempted murder. This was also having attacked another teacher and pupil, as I mentioned before. I don't know how aware you are of the sentencing review today and the talk about shorter sentences for perpetrators. You strike me as someone that may support rehabilitation and education. You know, you are a teacher. As you've said, you know, these children don't just attack overnight. There is a long history there. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on sentencing today for those who carry out these kind of attacks. Well,
And I think I got quite strong feelings about that. The point of sentencing should be for rehabilitation, but it all depends on the danger that they pose if they are released early. You know, what difference does a year make? You know, I don't agree with just keeping people in prison just as a punishment. It's got to be prevention of danger to other people, and it's got to be about rehabilitation. And I know Liz feels the same. She said in a sentencing impact statement when she addressed it to the girl, you know, she really, really hopes that when she is released, that she will have found some way to move on from the way she's feeling now. You know, in court, it was a weird feeling to think that a 14-year-old girl was going to be put into prison and she won't be out for so long. She'll be an adult when she come out. And we drove her along Swansea seafront after, and we just said she's never going to be able to see. You know, she's going to have 7, 8, 9 years, and she won't see the sea, and she won't do these things, and that's all her childhood gone. We just hope that she does get rehabilitated and something good comes out of it for her. In terms of, but it shouldn't be, you know, as long as the reviews are taken that there isn't a danger to the public. I don't know, you know, we've got overcrowded prisons. Something has to be done, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a really tricky one, but you've given such a measured and thoughtful answer. I really appreciate that. We had a former prisoner on the programme earlier who said essentially, you know, time in prison is time wasted and it shouldn't be that way. Like you said, rehabilitation and education, particularly for those offenders who are so young. John, it was really good to talk to you. As I said, please give our best to Liz. That's John Hopkin there, husband of Liz Hopkin, who was attacked by a student at a school in Wales. Really appreciate your time. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, John. Now, in other news, campaigners are taking the organisers of Wimbledon to court halfway through this year's tennis championships. The Save Wimbledon Park group have challenged the All England Lawn Tennis Club over their controversial plans to build 39 new tennis courts and an 8,000-seater stadium on the site of the old Wimbledon Park golf course. Well, one of the drivers of the campaign is 10-year-old Gabriel Francesini, who has set up a petition that's been signed by more than 300 primary school students voicing their concerns over the plan. I'm glad to say he joins me in the studio now alongside his mum, Alison. Hello to you both. Thank you so much for coming in. Well, Gabriel, this is quite the fight you have on your hands, but you live in the area and I can see you wearing your badge here, Save Wimbledon Park. Why are you so opposed to this expansion of Wimbledon?
I don't want this because this is just unacceptable. There's the wildlife, there's bats, newts, trees, and And there's the short run and there's the long run.
Yeah.
I'm mostly passionate about the trees and all the wildlife. And I think that it's important to protect our land because that's also in the long term. There's also going to be pollution and
all the effects that a big development bring to an area. I mean, I was trying to get my head around the scale of this new change and, you know,
it's enormous.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It nearly triples the footprint of the Wimbledon Championships. So can you point out you know the area better than I can. Can you point out the area where it's going to go?
Oh,
I have no.
No,
I can help you with it.
It's around.
It's
top right.
It's the whole green space opposite the championship.
That's a huge chunk of your local neighbourhood.
To where the athletics track is.
And
it's 73 acres.
And you've been learning a lot about the local area because you oppose this mainly because of the green space. But like you said, you've been learning a lot more about what's there, the wildlife, the bats. What are some of the things you've learned about the things you may be losing if this goes ahead?
We will be losing. If the birds survive, the bugs will probably not. So the birds, as a result, will not come to eat the bugs because there will be no bugs.
It's all connected, isn't it?
And it'll disrupt the food chain.
Yeah.
And there's also traffic.
Yeah.
Bulldozers.
Yeah, it will divert more traffic towards primary schools. I mean, you've got all the cons listed on your petition website. I mean, Alison, this is quite the impressive effort from your son here to take this on. Talk to me about what stage you're at in fighting this, because you've got a lot of support.
Gabriel came up with this petition last September, October, and it was really driven by him just on his own, and he wanted to speak to his peers at school. And so it started as a very small, very personal, very localised campaign within his primary school and had great support from teachers, headmaster, fellow pupils and great friends who clubbed together and they spoke to the whole school in assembly. And it was very much just at school. And then several months passed by and he got his petition up and running, managed to even get it online, which was a miracle. And then we found the Save Wimbledon Park organisation and I wrote to them and said, I don't know if you're interested, but there's a little boy who's very keen. And they said, oh my God, we really want to meet him. So we took him to a meeting where he met the other campaigners and he suddenly had 500 new friends.
Well, yeah, and this, you know, has been gaining signatures overseas in Italy and other areas of Europe. You're really on a mission. I understand you've got quite a cohort now of supporters alongside you, not just your school friends. I've been hearing about a 100-year-old supporter who's going to go to some extreme lengths to try and stop this from happening. Can you tell me what her plan is?
Chaining herself to a tree.
Chaining herself to a tree.
Basically. And she does say in the next breath, but that's highly illegal because it's private land, so I wouldn't dream of it. But she has a twinkle in her
I'm
eye.
not doing it either is because of her.
Oh, right,
Yes,
OK. He's a determined young man. He's a determined young man. I wouldn't recommend that. I think your petition is enough.
But Thelma is amazing.
Yeah, but it's fair to say you are a fan of tennis, you are a fan of Wimbledon, but you just think that this goes too far, Gabriel?
I mean, they've got tons of it. And I understand that they may... I understand that because it's the only grass...
Yeah, it's quite a special place, isn't it? Grass courts,
because it takes 6 months to grow it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you play the qualifiers on it, for like a week, it's just going to destroy the grass.
Oh, listen...
but in, like, Roland Garros, it's all...
And France in the clay courts.
Yeah, so it's easy. You can play 52.
Yeah.
We do understand their predicament as well.
Yeah, but they are now starting to understand yours as well.
Yes.
Well, listen, we will follow your campaign. Gabriel and Alison, thank you for coming in to see us, to talk to us about it. And as I said, we'll keep in touch and follow your progress. Thank you.
Thanks, SJ.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight, I'm going to be meeting another 10-year-old tonight. This is a 10-year-old DJ who is heading to the party island of Ibiza this summer. We'll bring you the details on that. And how England's cricketers are hitting tons for fun 3 centuries on day 1 of their test with Zimbabwe.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks, but taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there.
This is much more like a normal town.
It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
20 clubs, 10 matches, one final day. It's Premier League Championship Sunday. Broadcasting and streaming live. The Champions League chase comes to an end. And Liverpool are crowned in front of the Anfield faithful. Premier League Championship Sunday. All starting at 11 a.m. Brought to you by Expedia.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, the 10-year-old from Milton Keynes who's going to be spending the summer DJing in Ibiza and festivals across the UK. But first, it's time to get a look at the day's sports news with David Garrido.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Patrick, let's go back to the start of your time here at Genoa. You took over in mid-season. It's the first time you've done that as a coach. Talk to us about the journey that you've had and the pride at the achievement of securing safety this season in Serie A.
It was a big challenge. It was a big task. And of course, I take time to make a decision because knowing the difficulties to go to a club in a mid-season with a huge challenges on the field because the result wasn't the best, challenges with injuries because the group of players had a couple of injuries and important players, and of course huge challenges because of the stability of the club outside of the field. So when you put all together, it was a big one. But I strongly believed that I had the capacity and the quality to make this football club remaining in Serie A. There is a strength around this football club. And of course, what as well was a massive part of the decision was the fan base, the atmosphere in the stadium. So when I analyzed the situation and looking at the potential of the club, I think everything's there for me to do a good job.
How much have you drawn on the experiences from the clubs you've already managed?
I think in every club that I've been, I had a huge reflection on myself as a coach, as a manager, and today I am a different coach, different manager.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
And now, my final guest tonight is preparing to DJ at festivals across the UK and in the renowned party island of Ibiza. And she's just 10 years old. Eden Farrell, who's known as DJ Steady, has been honing her skills on the decks after her dad bought her some a couple of years ago. She started at the age of 8. Let's take a listen. In the gallery was loving that. Some dirty beats on Sky News. I'm glad to say that Eden joins me now in the studio with her mum, Maria. It's such a treat to have you here with us. Thank you so much. Eden, this is incredible. You got behind the decks when you were 8. Could you even see over them? Just about?
Yeah.
Yeah. What made you want to get into it?
Well, my dad bought some decks and he thought that he was going to use them, but he eventually didn't, and I started playing about a bit with the software on the laptop, and then my mum and dad realised that it was something that I was really interested in, so they looked for a whole entire year to find somebody who could teach me.
A whole year? Why a whole year, Maria?
I think given her age and the fact she was 8, nobody really took her seriously. I thought it was a bit of a joke.
More for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then we found this wonderful company, OTD, on the decks in Buckingham.
Yeah.
And they took her on and they've just taken her from strength to strength. It's been an amazing journey, hasn't it, darling?
Yeah.
Dare I ask how your dad's DJing's getting on?
He is not a DJ.
He's going to leave that to you, investing in the future. A DJ Steady, how did you come up with that name?
Well, it's another funny story with my dad. He used to call me Steady Eddie.
Okay.
And I thought that it'd be fun to have that, what he always called me, as a name that I'm going to keep for a very long time.
I like that. So your dad's going on your DJ journey with you. Is there a lot of practice involved? How many hours do you practice?
We practice quite a lot. I don't practice on Wednesdays, but we practice that on almost every other day.
Yeah.
For about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, most kids, if they're practicing music, it's like piano recorder at this age. Maria, it takes some dedication. How are you coping with this at home? Because I understand that Dad not only has had to give up his own DJ career, but he's had to give up his man cave as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're in Eden's bedroom at the moment, but we're just along for the ride. I mean, we're just happy that she's found something that she really enjoys doing. It was a bit of an interesting start, because I think it was quite lonely for you at the beginning, wasn't it? Being the only little girl, certainly in her friendships groups, that kind of likes, you know, house, jungle, drum and bass, all the different genres. But also kind of coming into the industry being so young. And a lot of the kind of younger drum and bass DJs are boys.
Yeah.
But we kind of went onto Instagram and found some little communities. So she's part of like Raving for a Reason, and they've got loads of young DJs that all come in and do mentoring. And she's signed to the DJ Archie agency now. So she's just going from strength to strength, and they will give her kind of different tasks to do during the week to kind of give her more experience. And we literally we are along for the ride.
Yeah, great. Well, you know, this is going to be your first proper season, isn't it, DJing? I know you're heading out to Ibiza this summer. You're also playing your first festival this weekend, In It Together in Wales. You looking forward to that?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been looking at the lineup. Lots of DJs on there, but big acts like Kaiser Chiefs, Pixie Lott, Ronan Keating and Becky Hill. You know, she's a DJ as well. She gets behind the decks.
Yeah, I really like Becky Hill.
Do you really like Becky Hill? Yeah, your music is right up her street. You're going to be looking out for her at the festival?
Yes.
Do you know what? I took a message earlier on today. Do you want to have a listen?
Yeah.
It's DJ Steady in the house. Hello, it's me, Becky Hill here. I just want to say best of luck for In It Together this weekend in Wales, and make sure you come and find me and say hi. I just want to wish you all the best, and I'll try and get down early so I can have a little rave to your set. Well done, Eden, and I shall see you this weekend. Mwah.
Whoa. Something tells me you need to include a little bit of Becky Hill in your set this weekend.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Well, Becky's such a big supporter of young and upcoming women in the industry. Have you been a fan of hers for quite a while?
Yeah, I love all the music that she makes.
Yeah, she's into those dirty beats and a bit of drum and bass as well. Where is it you want to go with this? Do you think this will be... Do you think you're going to be a superstar DJ, or do you think this is going to be a hobby, or where do you want to go with this?
I want to continue for a very long time, but if my interest ever dies out, I'll keep it as a hobby.
Yeah. Doing well at school as well, because it's always good to have, a couple of things on the go, isn't it, Mum? I suppose it's, practising a lot, Ibiza this summer, but trying to keep the schoolwork on the go as well.
Yeah, so it's definitely a balance. I mean, Eden's got other hobbies as well. She ice skates, and we make sure she has regular time with her friends and stuff during the week. And a lot of the things that she does in terms of events, they're family-based festivals. So like we've got Raver-Tots, for example, in Barnet. Yeah. They're really great because it is kind of families.
I know it well. I've taken my daughter. She's just 4.
They're so much fun, aren't they?
Yeah, really
so
good
much
fun. Well, listen, there is, you are going out to Ibiza this summer. When people think of clubs, they don't necessarily think of young children. And I know that you and her dad are supportive. And I suppose it's just about creating that environment where it's safe and happy for her as long as she wants to do it.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it is just searching out those opportunities where, like you say, it is a safe environment and they're going to have her best interests at heart.
Yeah. OK. What are you packing for the festival this weekend? I've not looked at the weather forecast, but it normally rains at a festival for a bit, doesn't it? Have you got your wellies?
Yeah, instead of my wellies, I'm actually bringing some white sparkly calico boots.
Yes, you are. Are you a Swiftie as an alter ego as well? Into a bit of Taylor Swift, like?
The fact about me is I actually hate Taylor Swift.
Oh, I think I might have found the only 10-year-old that doesn't like Taylor Swift.
But I do like Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter.
There you go. Oh, well, listen, good luck at the festival. Yeah, let us know if you run into Becky. She'll be looking out for you and coming to see your set, and I'm sure you'll try and hang around for hers. Thank you for coming in to see us, and good luck. We look forward to you rising as a superstar DJ. We'll follow your progress. Nice to meet you, DJ Steady and Mum Maria.
Thank you.
Well, that's all from the UK Tonight. You can, of course, catch up on all the highlights on our webpage. We'll make sure we include Eden on that. You can scan the QR code that is on your screen, or it should be coming up on your screen anytime now. We'll be back on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Up next, it is The World with Yalda Hakim. See you later.